Yes. Good evening. This is the biggest crowd I've seen here in a long time. Please don't tell President Clinton that there are more people here for this event than there were at our last event when he was here, but this is really, really exciting. So welcome everyone to the Clinton Center. My name is Stephanie Street and I serve as the Executive Director of the Clinton Foundation. Tonight's program is about being lost and finding your place. It is about resilience and love set against a backdrop of injustice and hardship. But mostly, it's about the redemptive power of love. Our special guest tonight is Arkansas's own Walter Pryor, and our distinguished moderator is the remarkable Stacey Abrams. We are thrilled to welcome them both. Walter's memoir is set right here in our own backyard. In his prose, he explores the lesser-known Arkansas Black rural experience during the 20th century through the eyes of his beloved grandmother, Mama Ceal. Tonight, we will learn how her written word gave him the support and guidance he needed to forge his own path. Through Walter and Stacey's conversation, we will all benefit from Mama Ceal's wisdom. This program and all of our other programs are only made possible through the great generosity of our Clinton Center supporters and donors, and we are extremely grateful for all of you. Thank you all so very much. A couple of just brief housekeeping notes, please. Go ahead and take the time to silence your cell phones. And remember, you can stream all of the Clinton Center's public program on our YouTube channel, on demand on our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy this conversation, please share it with your friends. I'm sure that will help with book sales as well. But all of our programs, I love to rewatch them, and I hope you do too. Tonight's program is also a partnership between the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Presidential Library and Museum. So I'd now like to invite my friend, Dr. Jay Barth, the director of the Clinton Library, to the podium. Jay.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And we are indeed fortunate to have two amazing guests at the Clinton Presidential Center this evening, Walter Pryor and Stacey Abrams. I've had the great fortune of being Walter Pryor's friend for over 4 decades. When we first met, our first week at Hendrix College. Over the next 4 years, we shared classes, student government meetings, and conversations over dinner and in the dorm rooms. And in all of those settings, Walter showed a commitment to social justice, a deep care for others, and a sense of humor that included more than its share of good-natured ribbing. During our time at college, I was always impressed how deeply connected Walter remained to his family, going home regularly to Pine Bluff and carefully balancing time with them and with his many campus commitments in which he showed his talents. And I want to note that his mother, Ruth, is here on the front row. Along with his sister, and we're very thrilled that both of y'all are here tonight. That connection to his family remained very central as Walter went on to law school at Georgetown, and as he and his wife Juliet Pryor moved several times for different opportunities in the private sector, in public service, and in higher education. Because of the centrality of family in Walter's life, it was not surprising that family is at the heart of his first book, This Leaves Me Okay. And you're going to hear the conversation, as Stephanie said, about his grandmother, Lucille, Mama Ceal Hatch Eldridge, and the letters that she wrote to Walter over the years, and the way in which that has framed his thinking about the life of being Black in the rural South over time, and the ways in which, while change has occurred, many challenges remain. And the He asks, and the story answers a key question. How did this woman, who was devalued in American society, figure it out how to make her small world better and stay hopeful for her family's future? After the conversation, books will be available for purchase, and Walter will be very happy to sign them. We do ask that you stay seated after the program so that he can get out to the signing table and meet y'all. While Walter and Juliet split their time among Charlotte, Chicago, and Martha's Vineyard, we are now very lucky that Walter has returned his attention to Arkansan. He now serves as Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel for Southern Bancorp, where Walter oversees, leads, and directs the administrative operations for that CDFI based here in Little Rock. Walter also serves on the Board of Trustees of Hendrix College, continuing his work in education and his passionate commitment to that has been shown in so much of his volunteer work over the decades. In conversation tonight with Walter is Stacey Abrams. As many of you know, Stacey is a New York Times bestselling author, political leader, and entrepreneur. Her latest book is the legal thriller Coded Justice, a book in the Avery Keene series published just a couple of weeks ago, and she has been on book tour herself. She served 11 years in the Georgia, sorry. We wish. In the Georgia House of Representatives, 7 as minority leader, and was the first black woman to become the gubernatorial nominee for a major party in United States history. Stacey has founded several solution-driven entities spanning the impact for-profit and entertainment sectors. In her work, Stacey seeks to establish opportunities and strategies that help others transform their potential into power. And as a nonprofit founder, Stacey has launched multiple organizations devoted to democracy protection, tackling social issues, and building a more equitable future in the United States. As someone who has thought deeply about the issues at the heart of This Leaves Me Okay, that is how to create a better South for everyone, and a best-selling author herself, Stacey is the perfect moderator for tonight's event. Join me in welcoming Stacey Abrams and Walter Pryor, the Clinton Presidential Center.
Thank you.
Stacey, can I stop you for 1 second? I know you're the moderator, but I just need to make one little statement first, all right?
I've met you, so this is dangerous, but go ahead.
So I just want to say, you have no idea how surreal this is for me. First of all, we're at the Clinton Center, and I have such deep and abiding respect for both President and Secretary Clinton and the work that they've done in the state, nationally, internationally. So that alone is a lot. Similarly, our family friend who agreed to do this, which I was convinced would never happen, is sitting here, and that also is a lot for me. I'm happy to have my family, my extended family, friends who are like family, some of whom have flown in from Connecticut and Washington, D.C. and other places to be here for this. That overwhelms me. And it's also this really odd confluence of various aspects of my life. So I have, people from Barricue Street Church in Pine Bluff to Hendrix College to working with Mark Pryor to, my new Southern Bancorp family, as well as my new fraternity brothers, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, best fraternity in the world. And I just wanted to say to you how grateful I am that you would show up. And I realize, however devastatingly handsome I get as I age, I'm pretty clear that you're not just here to see me, but I'm really, really grateful. And so the one other thing I would like to do, I see you all taking pictures, but I would really like to be able to take a couple of pictures of you from this angle. So if you don't mind, just give me a second.
What are you doing?
I'm just taking a picture. I'm done. You can now start.
Hold on. Actually, we did not plan this, but he did what I was talking about, only he's doing it wrong. We're going to do 2 things instead.
Okay. All right. I'll take the picture.
So stop.
Let me just do mine.
It just looks like you're stalking people. Okay, so what we're going to do first is boost your book sales. So you're going to stand up with me, and we're also going to save friendships. A bunch of y'all have these phones like you're trying to take secret pictures. We can see you. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to come here and here, and we're going to make our way all around. Y'all are going to take pictures. And then at the end, once they love you even more, we're going to do a selfie with them so they can see you, and it doesn't look like you were just, oh, thank you. That's the Walter upgrade, Juliet. Okay, let's go. What about me? And 10, 6, 2, and 1. Hold on, you decide to take it. Okay. Here we go. Y'all are prepared. Here we go. Awkward. Three. Focus in. 3, 2. Okay, you were taking 78 pictures. 1. There we go. Okay, over here. So now that you have those pictures, post them, mention him, mention this extraordinary book. You want to put my name in it, feel free. But really, it will. We want to do as Stephanie said. We want to sell all the books and all the land. So don't just have these sit on your phone until iCloud reminds you that you now have no memory left. Okay. Walter Pryor. This book, you were kind enough to invite me to read it in its formative stages, and then I had a chance to read the final version. I want to start with the title and why this title is both so profound and also just such a statement of clarity. Talk about why this is the title you chose.
So interestingly enough, well, let me start with this. This leaves me okay is a line that my grandmother used to write in my letters. And for those of you that don't know the story, my grandmother only had an 8th grade education, was a maid most of my life, but for whatever reason, she decided she was going to write letters to not only me, tons of people in our family. And I never had the presence of mind to save those letters as a child. Who does, right? But when I was in law school, for some reason, I just started sticking them in my desk drawer so that by the time I graduated, maybe I had 3 dozen of these letters or so. And to have all of those together felt like something, right? You know, those you don't throw away. So I kept them and held on to them and continued to save them a few years after that. So I have, those letters as well as her excitement for my marriage, birth of our daughter, all of those kinds of things. And so this leaves me okay as a letter that is a line she would write in the letters. And when I started writing, I didn't know what the title would be. And I just said, you know what, this is my working title. I'll come up with another title, but this just kind of feels like what it should be. And it really feels God ordained in so many ways because I just had not given it that much thought. And as I worked on the book and as themes came to me, I didn't start this with a specific message or lesson that I wanted to share. I really was just trying to honor my grandmother. I really was trying to honor her life. And so as I learned more about her in this process, This Leaves Me Okay started to feel rather profound. And it's a kind of line that it's not common, and it made me wonder, where did she get this from? How did she start saying this? And I still don't know the answer to that, but as I researched it, I came to understand that, without going into too much detail, it's almost a line that says, this allows me to be okay, this allows me to be well. And so I think of it on so many levels. One, as an aspiration, almost, because I'm not sure if everything was well and okay with her when she was writing. And so I see it almost as a mantra, as a prayer that she's saying. I see it as an encouragement to herself and to me, in case everything wasn't okay with me. And I see it almost as this kind of act of resistance to craft and find joy in where she is or where she was at that particular time. And so as I learned more about her and as these themes started, coming through in the book, I was like, gosh, yes, this is absolutely the line, because it so captures what her whole essence was about. And so it really, I take no credit for it. One, because it's her line, but two, I don't know how I got to the place that I picked it, but I certainly am glad that I did.
I love the line, especially in this moment that we're in, where things feel so hard and feel permanently hard. And one of the reasons this book is so touching and so necessary in this moment is that it reflects a time that also felt permanent and hard. And she was required to make choices that, out of context, could seem inexcusable, and yet in context made absolute sense. Can you talk a bit about what you learned about her, what you learned about your mother through the writing of this book that you didn't know before you started?
So let me address your first observation, and then I'll get to what I learned. It is particularly impressive to me that she was able to say things like, this leaves me okay, in the time that she did. And I compare that to how it feels now. And I feel hers is even more impressive in her ability to see the positive, because at least we have seen a civil rights movement. We have seen a Barack Obama. She had not seen any of that. And even as those things were happening, not all of them were filtering to her to know, to be encouraged, to know that there were people fighting and really striving to make things better. And so she believed, and she took those steps, and she walked in faith when there really wasn't a whole lot to give her a reason to do that, other than her faith in God, right? We at least have seen what we should be. We've seen the path that we are on. And I still say we're on the path. Yes, it's very depressing right now to see a lot of what's happening. But I believe that there are more people who support progress than there are who support what's happening. And I believe that it is going to happen. And so the lesson from her in many ways is to keep the faith, to keep pressing on, even if it doesn't seem like you're doing much. I think collectively it all comes together to move us forward. Now, in terms of what I learned, one of the things that really struck me, and hopefully these won't be spoilers. I think the book is what it is, and you'll discover the story. But one of the decisions that Stacey referred to is my grandmother and grandfather, who I'm named after, made the decision to send my mother away to go to a better school, because the rural school where they were was not very good, and somehow they got in their mind they wanted her to go to college. Well, that seems like a really difficult choice, just the decision itself. But then as I researched and I started putting things together, I realized my grandmother and grandfather didn't have my mother until they were 5 or 6 years married. Now think about this. This is not a time when people, at least Black rural people, are planning pregnancies, which means my grandmother either lost pregnancies, lost children, or she had difficulty getting pregnant. So they didn't have my mother for many, many years. Now they have this child that they've waited for, they've prayed for, they've wanted, and they have to make this decision that for her to have a better life, they need to send her away to live with someone else. It cuts me deep to think about that, and to also honor her strength and ability to make that decision, because the ripple is why we're all sitting here. I mean, had they not sent my mother to away to live with a relative, she may not have gone to college. And she and I have talked about this. She said, it's very possible that I wouldn't have gone to college. And so because of a decision that she made in 1946, 47, 48, somewhere in there, we're all sitting here. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just like mind-blowing?
I want to stick with the conversation about education, because throughout your recollections, your recitation of her story, she was an extraordinarily curious woman who believed that knowledge would not just transform her daughter, it would transform her. And I found that through line when she would write to you and would question things that she said, or there's just a tug where she says she wants to know more. Talk a bit about how you experienced that curiosity from her throughout your life, especially when you were going off to college, and how she engaged you.
Gosh, we should have talked long before now. It's such an interesting observation, because I don't know that I fully formed it that way. But what I will say, well, let me back up just a little bit. Part of the reason I wrote the book is my grandmother was my person, right? You know how you just have somebody or a few people in your family that's your person? She was my person. She cooked, of course, all the traditional Southern things, but she could cook. She could rival a French chef just by looking at a recipe. She sewed curtains, she sewed clothes, she crocheted, she knitted, she needlepoint, she cross-stitched, she gardened, she watched wrestling. She taught me to play cards. This amazing woman, in my mind was a Renaissance woman in so many ways. And when I learned about her life and the things that she had experienced, some things I knew, some I didn't, I was really intrigued around how do you go through that to become the person that I knew, who was loving, great sense of humor. You would think she grew up in a garden, because she never acted as if she had all these bad things that happened to her. And so for me, the way that I experienced it and her kind of curiosity was that she just seemed open to everything. She was willing, she tried recipes, that she'd never heard of, but that looked nice in the Southern Living book that she picked up in the doctor's office, or it was in the newspaper. She was proud of my and my sister's accomplishments. She always asked how we were doing in school. It was never as profound as it seems the way you asked the question. It was actually much more very practical every day, but that demonstrated that she was curious, and that despite her own educational limitations, that didn't stop her from being curious and for asking those questions and indulging her inquisitiveness.
Well, one of the reasons that came to me was that when you read through her letters, she spends time, not only asking about you, but telling you about your family members. And then when you describe the obstacles that she had to traverse, there were obvious moments where she could have given up. There were clear gates where if she had just said, this is too hard, I will stop. But what you describe, particularly around her decision with your mother, but how she navigated each tragedy, signals that she was unwilling to believe that she wasn't capable of the next big opportunity. Talk to me about what that has meant to you as you've navigated the life that you've had.
So you have to understand, so much of that I didn't know for a good portion of my life. I mean, I knew that my grandfather had drowned when my mother was very small, and that she became a maid at that point. But it's only been since writing the book that I've had this really great appreciation for her fortitude and her resilience and how she was able to keep going. And I think, I think there's something in her DNA. I think there's something that she passed to my mother, that my mother passed to me, that I couldn't have articulated, but there's just something that says you keep going, you keep believing, you keep praying, you keep trying. And I feel so incredibly grateful for that, because I know not everybody has that outlook and that, that wealth of being born into that kind of family. But, her life takes on even greater proportions for me, even as I go back and look at stuff that I wrote, right? Or as people ask really insightful questions about her, it's like this continual unfolding of revelations about her that hopefully I'm sharing with my children, but the impact of her life really dawns on me differently every day.
Well, I have a whole series of questions I'd planned to ask you about your mother, not realizing she'd be staring at me. So I'm going to look away as I ask them. But in reading the memoir, there were moments where I was like, oh God, don't do that. Or yes, make that decision. And it was fascinating to be dropped into your mother's experience. And one of the beautiful tools that you use in this story is imagining what Mama Ceal was thinking, imagining how your mother was understanding those moments. How much of that did you make up, and how much of that did she tell you, and did she lie to you?
So, interestingly enough, my mother was not a willing source of information. When I would ask her, and she was aware that I was interviewing her for the book, she couldn't remember anything, or very little. If by chance I happen to think of something that Mama Ceal did, and I said, oh, do you remember when so-and-so happened? Do you think this was so-and-so? And I didn't look like I was taking notes. She would just talk and speak. And so I took a lot of that. So I did make up some of it. But some of it,
You interpreted something. There you go.
Thank you. Juliet tried to teach me that, and I still said it incorrectly.
We're trying.
Some of it I observed. Some of it I did observe, the tension between them, and I could see one's intention and the other's not fully receiving it or appreciating it. And so a good portion of this was just me extrapolating from what I had observed, trying to figure it out. And the real moment came when I finished the book, and I sent the manuscript to several people, but I also sent it to my mother. And two really important things. One, I just learned this since the book has come out. She said, I couldn't read it all the way through. I have to read a little bit and I have to stop and put it down because it was so difficult. But the other thing she said to me was, and she knew she hadn't been a fount of knowledge and information. She said, I don't know how you got in my head so. That, I didn't need any other review or any other whatever at that point, because I'm like, yes, I'm glad that I was able to capture what I thought I saw.
Well, one of the most beautiful and, again, inspiring parts of the memoir is the story of your mother as she navigated living with someone who clearly loved her but didn't necessarily like her. Yeah, didn't like children. And one of the, it's hard to say this with your mama, sitting right there. But I think about you and Juliet and your children and wonder, given that experience, it's always hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but could you imagine having made that same type of choice if you'd known what the outcome would be, but also what the experience would be? And for those who haven't read this yet, there's a very difficult choice made. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about the resilience of Mama Ceal, but Mrs. Pryor, your story it's extraordinary. And your resilience is also worthy of being lauded. So I just want to take a moment and say that to you as well.
So in addition, well, thank you for saying that. And I will say, Juliet's brother, Saul Williams, who's a multi-hyphenate actor, writer, musician, whatever, when he first read it, he said, this is a love letter to your grandmother, but it's also a love letter to your mother. Yes. Which I had not realized as I was writing the book. And so I'm really happy about that. And what I'm also very happy about, my mother's not terribly expressive, and I don't know that her story would have been told otherwise. And so one of the things that brings me such great joy is that I feel like my mother feels that she's been seen without having to shout or tell anybody, and that her story is now there. It's captured for my children. Now, to your point about Momo, Jackie and I experienced Momo as a child, almost in the same way that my mother did. And so, so much so that it was so clear to me that everybody loved Mama Ceal. I mean, everybody loved Mama Ceal. Momo, they were pleasant. They she was nice. And there was a period.
What was she?
She could be. But there was a point as a kid where I consciously made a point of trying to sit with Mama or spend more time with her because it was so clear to me that people favored Mama Ceal. And so I'm getting around a way to answer your question. I'm not sure. I wonder how much Mama Ceal knew that would be the experience my mother would have, or if she made the decision, we'll just have to get through it. I mean, obviously, she lived with Momo as they grew up as sisters, so she knew her. So she probably suspected some of the was going to happen. But I think she was so determined in this desire to give my mother more that it was a sacrifice she was willing to make. And the difficult part is, some of it was her sacrifice, but some of it was my mother's sacrifice. And that's where it draws this kind of discordance around, do you have the right to make that sacrifice for somebody else and make that decision? In terms of my own children, could I do that? I don't know. I really don't know. Our foursome, Juliet, Audra, Osei, and I, we're a tight clique.
I've never.
And so, there was one point when we were moving from DC to Chicago, Audra was going into the 11th grade. And we just said, gosh, this is so unfair to her. And for 10 minutes, we thought maybe we should let her stay in DC. She can live with really close friends, she'll have a good experience, and we won't uproot her. And then we were like, nah. We got to be together. So that's the closest I've come to that kind of decision. And so I don't know if I could. I hope that I could be mature and big enough to make that kind of decision and take my part out of it. But I don't know the answer to the question.
So let's widen the lens. Part of Mama Ceal's story is that in order to give your mother opportunity, she suffered a series of indignities, some of which were endemic to the time, some of which were legal, all of which were inappropriate. And part of the way you write the story is that Jim Crow is a character in this book. The challenges of class and race, which are two different dynamics, are very clear. Part of that is the distinction between Mama Ceal and Momo. Talk about how you decided to position those pieces? And was it an intentional architecture, or did it come about just because that's how you needed to tell the story?
Yeah, I wanted to say yes, I gave it such great thought, and it was part of a grand plan. But no, I think I just told the story in some ways as it was revealed to me, in some ways as I was able to interpret it. It's funny that you say that, because you just made me think there was one aspect of Jim Crow that I did not include in the book, and it was my mother was able to go to the zoo in Memphis on the day that black people couldn't normally go, because they had what they call Maid's Day at the Memphis Zoo. And so normally white people could go, and maids could go if they were bringing the children or with the families. And since my mother was, her daughter, she was able to go with her, it's a small thing, but it's so huge when you look back and think about it. And it's endemic of the kinds of things you're talking about in relation to Jim Crow being a character. I think it's a presence. The interesting piece about that is there's still a lot of that still exists today. From a racial standpoint, from a class standpoint, one of the great, you owe me. One of the great joys of my life is that I work at Southern Bancorp now. And the reason is that we are addressing needs of people who larger banks don't have the time for, right? They aren't able to spend the time. And part of the reason that I think we were able to do this so well is we foster a cultural competency around people who aren't otherwise valued, right? And so that's an example of somebody who's trying to address, or an entity, an organization, a group of people who are trying to address that. But it also speaks to the fact that it still exists today. And so I can't take any great credit for including it and for it coming across as a character, because I think it was just the everyday life of theirs. And I'm grateful that I was able to observe it, and that it comes through that way. But I don't know that I was smart enough to treat it in the way that you were able to receive it.
You should take credit for it. You did.
Okay, thank you. I take credit.
There you go. Staying with the conversation about class and race and Bancorp and the work that it does and the work you do, we see the story of your family. We get glimpses of you as you're going through college and off to law school, but you always come back. And part of the introduction of you from Jay was that you've come back again. Why? Now, I grew up in Mississippi. I came of age in Georgia. I've moved back and forth. I went to Texas for a second, was confused. I came back. Went to Connecticut, came back. Deep South is where I live. And I say that because I'm a daughter of the South, that it is who I am. Technically, I was born in Wisconsin. I just remember cold and cheese curds, nothing else. But there's a conscious decision that has to be made to live in a place that does not always celebrate your existence. You want the microphone? Talk to me about the choice that you and your family have made for this to once again be part of your lived experience, and how much you bring of Mama Ceal and your mother to the choices that you're making.
So part of it is, I don't know how not to come back. I mean, my family is here. My mother's here. I have extended family. My mother's an only child, which you recognize. And I mentioned Barracue Street Church earlier, but I did it because out of that church came siblings to my mother in many ways. So my Aunt Shirley is here. My Aunt Alma is here. We're not related to them by blood anyway, but Chris represents Aunt Beverly and Uncle Leon. I am so fortunate to have grown up with the family that I did. And I include those people. And so if those people are here, then I have to come back. It doesn't matter what all the other surrounding stuff is, whether it's junk or crap or whatever, I have to come back. the decision to join the board of Hendrix College or to come work for Southern is in some ways a way of trying to give back, since I didn't. Interestingly enough, when I went away to law school, I was convinced I was coming right back to Little Rock. I was going to come back to Little Rock. And on the first day of law school, I met this woman. Okay. And we ultimately got married. And for some odd reason, she didn't want to come to Arkansas. And she was from New York, and I didn't want to go to New York. And so we ended up making our home in Washington, D.C. I will say part of it was because at the time, I didn't have offers from firms in Little Rock. And I worked at a few firms, and there were, there were all kinds of factors that go into any particular year in which people get jobs. And so I hold no ill will.
What year did you graduate from law school? What year did you graduate from law school?
The last year that dinosaurs roamed the earth. 1990.
Okay. I am taking it from a very knowledgeable yet silent source that you may not be telling the whole truth about what happened.
Well.
And therefore, I'm going to ask you to expound and not quite justify as much as you are doing.
I'm not justifying. I'm really not trying to. I'm just saying I didn't have offers. I don't
Did you do well in law school?
I did decently.
Am I going to have to bring your mama up here?
Really, I cannot.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a scenario, and I want you to tell me if this is. So, you want to say what you just called me, so we can explain?
I tried to say this, and she brought it. So, some years ago, Stacey was visiting us, and I was trying to do something or get her to do something, and I said, "Oh my God, you are so stubborn," and she said, "That's a really interesting observation, Pot." So our nicknames for each other are Pot and Kettle. And so I was trying to get her to let this go and move on. But anyway, obviously she's not.
But I think it's an important dynamic to lift up, because especially in a moment where DEI is under attack and where this presumption of incapacity is attributed, I think it's always critical for us to recognize that the reason we have the laws and the framework of DEI is to mitigate what you experience. For example, when Maynard Jackson, who was the most successful Southern mayor, who created millionaires among the Black community in Atlanta, when he finished his time as mayor successfully, he was simply just not allowed to run, he could not get a job. It was not because he hadn't proven himself capable. I'm going to ask you again. Do you believe that there was something endemic in what was happening that may have precluded you from getting offers? And given that experience, talk about how your upbringing helped prepare you for navigating that. Not for being bitter about it, but for navigating what would, I think, reasonably be ascribed to something other than your brilliant turn as a law student.
So let me say clearly again, my beautiful wife has an opinion, and she is obviously telepathically sending it to you.
Well, she's right, and so...
It's possible. What you're suggesting or implying is that perhaps because I'm Black, I didn't get an offer. And what I wanted to say is, I don't know if that was a factor. I mean, I know there was some concern. I had gone away to Georgetown. Some people weren't sure I really was serious about coming back to Arkansas to work. There were any number of factors that could have been. But for the sake of argument, if that was the case,
I realize how discomfited you are by this moment.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't want you to dig the hole any deeper.
I won't. Ladies and gentlemen, Donna Thompson Bennett flew in from Connecticut, friend of ours from law school.
Georgetown Law School.
Georgetown Law School.
Keep digging. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm not going to keep digging. I will say, let's get to your bigger point. And your bigger point is, do people in this room experienced racism or discrimination, or have the practices that did not embrace DEI result in those kinds of decisions being made? And yes, I think that was true. I don't know. I'll stop. What does that do for me in relation to how I raise my children or decisions we make? I mean, every black person in this room, I would dare say, has heard from somebody in their family, from a mentor, whatever, you got to be twice as good to be considered. And that's how, it's a truism. It's like the sky's blue. I mean, we just know that to be the case. And so, as opposed to, and I'm not suggesting DEI is fighting windmills, but we don't spend a lot of time complaining. We do work to try to make it better. But you just accept that as being, that's the way the cards were dealt. And in some ways, I feel like that's how Mama Ceal, navigated. The cards were dealt. And she played the hand that she had. And she played it very well. Hopefully, I've played my hand, pretty well. I've probably some choices I've made that I would go back and maybe do differently. But I think your point is a good one. Your point from the standpoint of, is diversity important? Absolutely. Is equity, inclusion important? Absolutely. Because we create a better world, a better society. We're able to do more. Businesses. I mean, I think people know at this point, and so it's just kind of stubbornness that keeps you from acknowledging it. We know that businesses that have diverse viewpoints do better. They make more money. They bring more shareholder value. So the only reason that we don't embrace this is because we're holding on to, and I say the maybe royal we, collective we, that we don't want to let go of things that are comfortable, or we have to give up privilege, or we see this as a zero-sum game. We can't. The unfortunate piece is a lot of people who are responsible for the difficulty that we referenced earlier don't appreciate that all boats can rise with the tide, and they feel that if one boat rises, another has to be sinking. And that, I think, is at the heart of our being able to move forward. I think it's at the heart of what education can do. I think it's at the heart of these kinds of events where, I don't know what everybody's politics are, and I'm not going to assume that everybody's unhappy with the current administration or whatever. But I think there are points of commonality that connect us. And again, Mama Ceal's life, she loved the white family that she worked for. And even though there were points where we were like, are they being nice to her? Or do they really love her in the same way? She was able to get beyond that and create relationships with them that to this day, they still love her. The wife of one of the sons that she helped raise just texted me this week and said, I love the book. I still miss Bobo. I'm so happy you wrote this. Thank you for including us.
And I think that's absolutely true and legitimate. I'm going to push back on one part of what you said, though. I'm not sure if that was your sister or your wife, but
both. It probably was both.
But I think I want to recharacterize how you describe Mama Ceal in this exchange. You said, yes, we have to. It's a truism. We know we have to work twice as hard. But I don't think she accepted it as sort of a fait accompli. The way I read this story, the way I read my knowledge of you and my admiration for your mother, is that she found a different way to mount her challenge. That she refused to be defined by the systems that said this is what she would have. And it was more of a guerrilla warfare approach that she took. They said her daughter wouldn't have, and so she found Momo. They said that she couldn't work here or this couldn't happen. And so she accepted only the fact that the challenge existed, not that the challenge was lost. And I think your story, and I'm going to ask you to talk about this before I turn to questions from the audience, you didn't just accept that you didn't get these jobs. Talk a little bit about what you did when firms in Little Rock, that shall not be named, decided that a top law student was incapable of serving their clients. Did you simply accept it as a truism that you were not going to be able to be a lawyer, or did you do something else?
Well, just to be very clear, you graduate law school with, what, $50,000, $60,000 in debt. You don't have a choice to sit and say, woe is me. And so I didn't have offers entering third year, and so I interviewed with anybody and everybody who would talk to me. Fortunately, it worked out. I was able to go to, I think at the time, maybe the largest or second largest firm in the country. So
okay, I want to sit on this point for a second. You accidentally got a job with one of the best law firms in the world when you were denied the opportunity of an interview because people didn't like your tie. Continue.
So, to your point.
You asked me to do this.
No. The Clinton people asked you to do this. I was afraid to ask you to do this. No, I mean, again, maybe it's in my DNA.
Yes.
The choice to just sit and languish or to be upset was not really an option. I had to pay law school debt. I wanted to get married, and I didn't think she'd marry somebody who didn't have a job. Darren said you wouldn't. I'd like to think otherwise. And so I think my children have some of that, but fortunately, we have been able to give our children a little bit more freedom and a little bit more of a safety net than we had. And so they're able to explore different things. Our daughter graduated college and couldn't decide what she wanted to do. And ultimately, she started working with the uncle of a classmate who was restoring old houses in Chicago. And Julianne says, "We spent all this money for you to come scrape paint off of windows?"
I think I saw that episode of The Cosby Show.
Yeah, right? Our son, bless his heart, is brilliant, speaks Italian, could have had an honors degree from Harvard, but decided he wanted to do sociology instead. Got to go to Goldman Sachs, but decided he wanted to renovate Italian villas. That's interesting, but he doesn't know how to hold a hammer. And yet, they are finding their way in the world. My only point is, they each also have this thing of pushing and going towards what it is they believe they're supposed to do. Now, they've had, a safety net that I didn't have. I mean, it wasn't a choice. I was gonna get a job, and I had to pay bills, period. Perhaps if my mother had it, she might have given me a little cushion, but she didn't have it. And so that's what I had to do. And so my hope is that that's in my children. My hope is that the creature comforts and the privileges we've been able to give them have not hamstrung them so that they don't have that grit and determination and ability to move forward. And I like to believe, I hope that I'm seeing, and I believe that I'm seeing that they have that as well.
Thank you. That wasn't too hard to get to. So I'm going to ask you 2 audience questions. I understand from our quick conversation you have a question for me, and then I'm going to close with an audience question. Okay? The first one is, what advice would you give to others who are trying to preserve their family stories, especially when those stories haven't been documented?
I think one of the things I really love, a program I really love, is StoryCorps. I don't know how many of you listen to NPR. I love those stories where people talk and they go and archive those stories. I think that's really important to do within your own family, just to have questions, have conversations, ask questions about who you come from, who your people are, what have you. Even since I've written the book, my sister and I were having a conversation last week, and she was talking about my grandmother's sister, my Aunt Cardline, and she's telling me things. I was like, how did I not know this? Why isn't this in the book? I wish I had known all of these things. And so as I wrote, part of what I really wanted to do was to inspire people to go back and look at their own families and to just ask those questions and to talk about it and to call the names of your relatives and keep their spirits living and to share that with your children and other people so that they at least know what those stories are. A lady that I did a book event at Juliet's mom's retirement community, and she said, I want you to know I started writing my grandchildren letters because of your book. I said, I love that. I said, but what I also want you to do, give them a notebook or a box or something to save the letters so that they keep all those letters going forward. But I don't know that I have any special tips, but I do think it's really terribly important for kids to be grounded, to have a sense of where they come from. I think it's important to celebrate families because part of the reason I wasn't going to write the book, it's just my grandmother, right? And I had minimized the heroism of her life. And I know each of you has somebody in your family who was pivotal, or several people in your families who were pivotal to your family going on and doing something, or you going on and doing something. You need to capture that, even if it's just to honor them and to say thank you as a way of paying it forward to your children. Because, again, this is so improbable that we're sitting here. I had no concept of how inspirational this could be to people. And so if there's no other lesson, I would say, look at this, look at me, the person who had no idea that this many people would come out for anything that I was doing, or that Stacey Abrams would ever say, yes, I'll moderate your discussion, or that the Clinton Library would say, please come do this, right? So improbable things can happen, and sometimes they can be really profound. You just don't know it, but it's so important to strike out and just to try.
Thank you. Please. I love this question. What can we do to demonstrate the value and legacy of Black domestic workers, both past and current, as well as future?
So I just learned this statistic when I did the book discussion in DC at Politics and Prose. The person who moderated the discussion was Dr. Julianne Malveaux, and I'm not sure if any of you know who she is, but she's a noted economist. And as I was a young person in DC, she was always being quoted. She was always on television, major commentator. And she made the observation, and I double-checked it, during the 1940s, 70% of the Black women who were employed as domestics, as maids. And so that fact in and of itself means practically every Black person who still exists right now had somebody in their family who was doing this kind of work. And it was for the betterment of their family, for that person to be here now. Part of what we do is acknowledge it and to talk about it. Obviously, in this period where particularly Black history is under attack, we have to resist, we have to celebrate our stories, we have to tell our stories. We have to not rely on schools and the education system and national federal education policy to value our history. We have to value it and we have to tell it.
Before you get your revenge, I will add one other point of policy. That statistic that Dr. Malveaux pointed out is one of the reasons that domestic workers are not covered by were not covered by Social Security, because it was predominantly Black women, and if domestic workers had been entitled to Social Security, it would have changed the complexion of that whole program. Okay, having depressed people, ask me a question.
So my question for you really dovetails with your observations about Mama Ceal. And you started out talking about how difficult this time is. Your book is very clear around what the challenges are for us. But yet, there's this theme of hope. And I'm curious as to how you see your impact, influence, through the lens of how you view Mama Ceal's life.
Thank you. That is an incredibly kind question. I'm a little afraid. Now, I begin with what you said. I mean, the way you titled this. This Leaves Me Okay is a call to action. And I've been incredibly privileged to, like you, to be in a place that would not be presaged by my family history. My grandfather was born in, my mom's father was born in Mississippi 25 years after the end of slavery. And within 2 generations, his daughter has a chance to sit in this room and got to run for some offices and stuff. And in this moment where we are fighting for the preservation of a democracy that is deeply imperfect, but wholly necessary, Mama Ceal's bravery is important, but so is her cunning. And that's why I pushed you a little bit on that question, because I think what you do so deftly in this story is you illuminate that she made choices. She could have let life happen to her. We could let autocracy happen to us. We could let racism and sexism and homophobia and xenophobia, these dark things, we could let them happen to us. Or we can acknowledge them and we can figure out how to navigate our way, not around them, but through them, and in the process build something new. She built a life for your mother. It was hard, it was mean. Again, the deepest respect for not just what Mama Ceal did, but for what your mother was able to do with what she did. We cannot get stuck in the harm. We have to see the harm as a call to action, and that begins with the mantra that yes, you may visit these things on me, you may visit voter suppression on me, you may kidnap people off of the streets and deport them to foreign lands, you may decimate the social safety net because you do not believe that poverty should be fought, you think it should be a given. But my response is going to be, this leaves me okay and ready to fight for the next thing. And that, for me, is Mama Ceal's legacy. But this is your event, and I'm not going to have the last word. And there is a fantastic question from a student that I'm going to read as soon as I figure out how to open my phone again. I'm a teenager who will be going to college in a couple of years. What words of wisdom would your grandmother have for me, and how would you apply that wisdom to the world we live in now?
I think Mama Ceal would say, do your best, baby. Be kind. Treat others as you want to be treated. I'm proud of you, and I know you can do this. And so, and basically, to me, what that encapsulates is you can be your own best advocate. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you can do this. And you will do it because you believe in yourself in doing it. People like Mama Ceal and your family, other folks believe in you doing it, and there's no reason that you can't.
Ladies and gentlemen, Walter Pryor, thank you.